Hi, I'm Karen, and today I'm going to give you 5 things that my mother never told me about how to have a great marriage. Now, these things can apply to any relationship really, but since I've spent the last 35 years investing my life in marriage, that's the context I will be referring to. Especially the first 4 suggestions are things that many of us have been told not to do. These suggestions are frowned upon and are behaviors that good little boys and girls should never do. However, in the past 2 years, during which I've separated from and recently reconciled with my husband, I've discovered that these forbidden behaviors are the very ones necessary to not only survive the challenges of one flawed human being building a productive, meaningful life with another flawed human being, but to actually thrive to the point of blessing and expressing life to all those they may encounter. Intriguing? I hope so. Let's get started. Okay, number 1, remember that it is all about you. What? Well, yes, of course you should be considerate of the needs and wants of your spouse. In fact, being there for the other person is certainly the cornerstone, that was easy for me to say, of the marriage relationship as most of us understand it. But what I'm referring to is that the fact that the only person you have any control over or the ability to change in any given situation or relationship is you. We all know this, right? And yet we spent countless hours worrying, complaining, badgering, harping, I'll say bitching about the behaviors of others, most especially the behavior of our spouses. And for what? What does this do to improve the situation, change their behavior, or enhance my feelings about it at all? Zero. Zilch. Nada. The only person on this planet that you have control of is you. Decide today to embrace and revel in that reality, that the only person you can change is yourself, and start with accepting yourself exactly as you are right at this minute. It really is that simple. Not easy necessarily though. Which brings me to number 2. Talk to yourself. Yes, in our society, the stigma against talking to oneself has diminished with the onslaught of technology and with the daily parade of people walking down the street, grocery aisles, or shopping malls, seemingly talking to themselves on any manner of topics we'd rather not hear about, right? Am I the only one that has thought that that person was talking to me? Nevertheless, it may seem to be a bit bizarre that the best way to have a better marriage is to start with the person in the mirror and talk to yourself early and often. In fact, mirror work, as it is referred to by Louise Hay, one of its greatest proponents, involves just that. Talk to yourself in the mirror using affirmations. In her groundbreaking book, You Can Heal Your Life, Louise reveals that she used the affirmation, I accept myself, for an extended period of time, years maybe, not only in the mirror but throughout the day. Now she has published countless books and is helping others in countless ways through her Hay House website and productions, just by starting with that simple affirmation. Take just 1 minute and try this right now. Go to a mirror and say to yourself, I accept myself. Look into your eyes and say it again. Repeat it a 3rd time. Repeat this process every morning for the next 30 days, and it will change your life. I promise. As you learn to accept yourself, you will be able to accept others, especially the person you've pledged your life to. I know this to be true because on our 34th anniversary, a year into our separation, I was feeling pretty low, and as I often do, I wrote in my journal about it. which is another good thing to do. I was rehashing for the umpteenth time the notion that even on my wedding day, I realized that I had married someone who didn't know me and therefore couldn't possibly love me. But this time, as I wrote it, because of all the mirror work I've been doing, the affirmations I've been saying, I didn't buy it anymore. I finally got it that I was the one who didn't know myself, and I was the one who didn't love myself. Therefore, the therefore was that I couldn't possibly understand or receive or believe that I was loved. Affirmations will change your life. Talk to yourself. Okay, number 3. Change your story. Change your story. And stick to it. We can be fiercely protective of our life story, or rather the stories we tell ourselves about our lives. This was certainly true for me. My story went something like this. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was the second of 4 beautiful daughters of a happily married couple. She dreamed of growing up and living happily ever after with her own charming husband and beautiful children. But then, trouble came to their happy home, and her mom and dad started yelling at each other. They had never done that before. Soon, her dad moved out, and soon after that, he married another woman and started another happy life with her and their 3 children. The little girl tried to make the best of it. She was very practical about it and hardly shed a tear. And even though she believed that her father really didn't love her after all, she vowed not to let this setback affect her plans. In fact, more determined than ever to prove that she could still find her happily ever after, she continued on her quest and finally fell in love with a kind man who loved her and wanted her for his own. They married and set out to have 4 children, a beautiful daughter and 3 handsome sons. However, the happily ever after seemed to be just over the next hill for our heroine. Try as she might, she never could discover where that part of the dream could be found. She became sad and cross, and soon there was no happiness in their home at all. She finally gave up on the dream and moved out, found a job 4 states away, and left them all behind. Left to herself, she only had herself to deal with, and what a revelation that was. One day, a woman who was like a fairy godmother to her told her that she could change her story. No, she couldn't change the events of her life, not one little bit. But she could change what she told herself about her life. So the little girl, though now a woman, immediately knew where she should begin with the transformation. She realized that when her dad moved out all those years ago, that she had told herself that her dad didn't really love her. What she didn't realize is she also told herself if her dad didn't really love her, then no man ever could. On the spot and without hesitation, she changed her story to read, "My father loved me. He only left because he believed it was best for me. He loved me until the day he died." She believed the new story because there was no reason not to. Armed with the newfound realization that she could give and receive love again as she had when she was a little girl, she reunited with her husband and family and lived happily ever after by changing the destructive stories she had told herself in the past and showing others that they could change their stories too. The end. So what's your story? What was one of the defining moments of your life? What are the negative aspects of that moment the things you've told yourself about it that you can change right now. Take a few minutes to consider and write down what you've told yourself about this event. The death of a loved one, an accident, an illness, or other major intersection of your past. Now take a deep breath and just consider how you could change the story you've told yourself all these years about that moment. Now that I'm a parent myself, I understand what it means to love my children. So I now know that of course my father loved me. At 12, I had no frame of reference for that. But I also didn't realize that I still carried that frame of reference with me until I was 57 years old. Use your experience you've gained over the years to change how you perceive that painful event from your past. Change your story and stick to it. All right. Suggestion number 4 for a great marriage. This one my mother probably did tell me. Laugh out loud. Laugh easily and often. Okay, maybe she didn't like it when I laughed out loud, but you get the idea. If you've lost your sense of humor, find it as though your life depends upon it, because it does. Proverbs says, "A cheerful heart is a good medicine." If you're not into Proverbs, Jimmy Buffett also says, "If we couldn't laugh, we would all go insane." As my husband and I were making our way back to each other, I discovered the seminar by Mark Kunger called Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. There are live events all over the country, or if you're like me and you can't wait for that, you can buy the DVD set. He has a sense of humor about marriage that you may have lost, and has a hilarious explanation of the differences in male and female brains that you don't want to miss. So check that out. And finally, my 5th suggestion for a great and successful marriage is very simple, but not necessarily easy. Never, ever, ever give up. Long before my husband and I made the choices that resulted in our separation, we had both given up on having a great marriage, or even a good one, or even a marriage at all. We had given up on ourselves and on each other. Speaking for myself, I had given up on trying to discover who I am and why I was sent here. Because my attempts to do that in the past had seemed so fruitless, because I was stuck in that cycle created by the story I told you about. I had lost my sense of humor. I focused on things I wanted to change about everybody else, especially my poor husband. I was afraid to take a closer look at myself, and I hid behind self-defeating thoughts that my ego created in a misguided attempt to protect me. Ironically, in my case, it was only by physically removing myself from the situation that I was able to gain the understanding necessary to be a great spouse and to triumphantly return to resume our marriage of almost 35 years. That is the path I had to take, but I believe that it is possible to find this same success within your marriage by applying the principles that I've shared with you today. So here they are again. Remember that it is all about you. You are the only person that you can change. Talk to yourself through affirmations and mirror work. Change your story. Laugh out loud and never give up. And have a blessed and happy life.